Yeah, here's something you probably wouldn't know. The rockets on the aircraft were basically an Irish thing. You might call them the IRA. It goes back to your roots. But the rockets were basically they were mortar shells. I think what they were is yeah, it's a mortar shell. You basically take a mortar shell instead of dropping. See, in the bottom of a mortar shell, you have it's basically a tube and a spike at the end, and when you drop the mortar in, it goes out. But one of the IRA people, Irish people, because we were basically in a war with pretty much the other people, they wondered, they thought about it, and they're like, well, what if we take a mortar shell, and put a tube on the end, weld the tube on the end, and then rig up a thing inside the aircraft where you press a button, it goes tink, and it hits that thing instead, a little like a plunger, so you just, or like a lever, you just pull back and then let it go, and it pushes the knob into the thing, or even a solenoid, a spring-loaded thing, and then weld the tubes on the front, and do those and then we could do rockets on our aircraft. And so they did some tests, and I went ahead and paid for it. I was like, yeah, go ahead and test it, see if you can actually hit something. So they made a road. They put an old truck on a road. They got everyone back on both sides because they're like, I don't know if we're going to be able to hit anything with it though, but yeah. Anyway, so they were messing around with it, and and basically all it was a mortar and a tube, and so instead of dropping it down a tube and it goes and goes off, it goes off that way, and then it uses the tube as a nozzle, and that's completely Irish, by the way, completely Irish, and basically got a little thing. It goes tink, and they put them on my aircraft, and I saw one actually, and I was like, get those things off my aircraft. I was like, get those damn things off. What is this? Like they because they put them on an aircraft. I was like, what is it? I mean, it was like, well, it's our, but I think the problem is they didn't explode when they hit. They had to change the mortars. Actually, are meant to go down like this, and then they have a little thingy, and they had to change the cone from what's it called to a, because they usually have a safety pin in the mortars. That keeps them from going off, because otherwise, you touch them and they go boom. I mean, if that pin goes in, it'll go boom no matter what. It doesn't have to be moving or nothing. So they put this cone on it, and I think what it was you take it and you twist it, and then puts it into the firing position or something like that. So before you went on an aircraft, you just go chick chick chick, go along turning the cone, and that way, if the mortar comes down like this, it'll still go off. But it's basically just a mortar. And they're working on making them a little bigger or something like that, just messing around with weaponry. And I was like, I have rockets. Because I had rockets. I just, they're just messing around with some mortars and stuff. And one of the other guys was like, they're lucky they didn't blow themselves up because they were welding on it. It's like, if they got that case hot enough, it would blow. Anyway, though, but it was just some Irish guys messing around, and they messed around. They did some tests, and they even sold a few, but and so like I don't really know. I was like, because they're not, they weren't accurate enough. I looked at it and I was like, they're not accurate enough. I mean, what if that was a house? You would have hit you would have killed everyone. I mean, yeah, that's the point. Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, though. They had to fire them in mass to actually do it. But yeah, I mean, it was more effective than a mortar. The Irish did say, well, it's more effective than a mortar because you can't see where it's going to land, really. I mean, other than like looking through the trees. It's like, yes, well, that is true. I mean, yeah. But yeah, those rocket things, those were Irish. And they led the Irish Revolution or whatever, back in the day. Like I mean, I didn't want them to kill anyone, but because it's like, I got enough money, guys. Like, you don't really have to be killing people to have property and stuff. Like, I mean, with the Irish, I was like, I just need workers, and I don't really need death and destruction. So they're like, so they're like, well, just in case, and stuff like that. So they did it, and because I was talking to them, I was like, you don't really have to be doing that. I mean, we have plenty of money. I mean. So they were messing around with them, and they made some bigger ones and some smaller ones, some other ones, and they were just messing around. And they did do some battles because it's kind of Renault was actually behind it. I mean, I know I'm kind of ratting them out here, but well, I mean, it's me basically, but I mean, it's my one of my teams, not necessarily the Renault exactly, not the owners of Renault, but I mean, they're people that worked in the company. So anyway, yeah, back in the day, I mean, things were a little bit different back then. We were getting involved in a race war with the blacks and stuff and the browns, and I mean, they wanted to rape people basically and consider it their tribal right to rape and kill. And I was like, well, I don't think so. So they had a little problem with some of my other people. So anyway, but yeah, I knew about it. I was like, oh yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, Irish are really, 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 really ingenuitive. I mean, there was a point in time when the Germans were kidnapped or gone or whatever, and the Irish had to survive on their own, kind of. So, I mean, there was plenty of money though. I mean, the Germans were really free. Like I was really free with it with the money, and the Germans were like, yeah, well, it's his money, so whatever he says goes. So yeah, I mean, if he wants to give you the money, he'll give you the money. That's fine. And some of the Irish were the same way. It's like, well, it's his money, so and basically I only paid for research and development and basically I wouldn't pay for a bank to get robbed or anything like that. I own most banks, but I mean, it's like, well, I mean, I'd pay for certain things like the protection of a group or something like that, or eliminating of a very bad person. So, that's where me and the Irish, kind of got in together because, I mean, they just wanted to live and survive and work at my factories, and I just, wanted to be able to pay them and live and survive myself. So, and the black people just kind of singled themselves out as people who just didn't want to take part in anything or work for anyone. So, they just wanted to rape and kill, and you be the Red Army, which basically was a what's called a allude or inlude to, I mean, in whatever, a suggestion of their growing area where it's all bloody, from having sex and raping women and stuff. And it's like, yeah, there's stories about them having sex with the dead and even horses and animals and stuff. Like they were pretty much just wild animals. Like that's why they call themselves the Wolf Pack, and they're like all proud of it. So, like wild animals or something. Anyway, they terrorized and they pretended like they owned stuff and they stole, but mostly they just stole stuff and stuff. So, and killed whoever owned anything, cars or whatever. So houses, they would just shoot up. They would walk in, or ring the doorbell, and then when the guy walked up, just boom, then just walk in. If you had a girl or a daughter, then they would start raping them or whatever. So this is 1905 to 1940, 1950. So anyway, that's what they were doing. So anyway, so like I say, I'm a tank and weapons manufacturer. Like I own the Bismarck and all the other ships and stuff. So it's like, well, I got the weapons. I mean, it's like Lucifer White Star Lines. When it comes to defending my people, it's like, well, I got the weapons. I've had them this whole time, so it's like, well, would a battleship be useful? I mean, when it came to people that just wanted to live and survive and didn't want to be pushed around by somebody with an army. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, and I had like 8 or 9 tanks, and I've always had tanks, and I've always had aircraft, and I've always had battleships. I had 8 or 9, and like I said, I was friends and allies with the Japanese and the Chinese. Like, I mean, I love them very, 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 very much. Like, I'd love to hug them and shake their hands and just like be like, in the old days, the old empire. I knew them back then. And I knew their great emperor, the one that they loved so much, and everything else. I knew them. I knew the family, and I knew the wife and back in the old shell days and stuff like that. The crest and stuff. And I remember the crest was gold. That star on the front of the ship, it was a solid gold flower.